So the American Museum of Natural History will remove the statue of Theodore Roosevelt from its entrance after years of objections that it symbolizes colonial expansion and racial discrimination. That's according to Bill de Blasio. Of course, Bill de Blasio is happy for the city to comply to get rid of Theodore Roosevelt's statue. This is now the Museum of Natural History, who I believe Theodore Roosevelt's dad was on the board of and helped fund it. Theodore Roosevelt, a guy I don't like. The guy was a progressive, started the Progressive Party. This is a progressive hero. They're now taking him down. I don't like Theodore Roosevelt. But I don't want his statue gone. And if you're going to remove it there, well, you better start chiseling the face of Mount Rushmore. Because he's on that too. We cannot get rid of our history. Good and bad, it must stand. You are robbing people of the opportunity to explain how nuanced people are. They're not all good. They're not all bad. If you read history on Winston Churchill from the Indian point of view, you'll hate him. He was a monster. If you read it from the Western point of view, he was amazing. So which was he? Both. Both. We all are. Ulysses S. Grant and Francis Scott Key statues were pulled down. Ulysses S. Grant, he's the guy who led the army that stopped the Confederacy. He's the guy that led the slaves to freedom. He's the guy that stopped the KKK when he was president. He went after them like nobody. He crushed the Klan. He presided over the ratification of the 15th Amendment. How is this guy bad? You know how he's bad? He once had slaves. No, he had a slave, and he didn't have it. It was, believe it or not, the slave was a wedding present. He got rid of him as soon as he could. Set him free. What do you mean he owned slaves? He was given, because of his marriage, a slave. He hated it. Why is he suddenly a slave owner? Holy cow. All right. So they're pulling down our statues. You know a couple of statues that aren't being pulled down? Here's a statue in Seattle. It's a bronze statue of the communist revolutionary known as Lenin. It came from the Czech Republic as they tore down these statues because they didn't want these communist dictators everywhere. So it was purchased by somebody in Seattle and eventually was just put into, the Fremont district. And so it's on a corner of a street in the Fremont district of Seattle. They're leaving that one up. By the way, the Marxists have unveiled in Germany, in their little chop or Chaz, they've just unveiled a new Lenin statue as well. Okay, but remember, this has nothing to do with changing our history and going towards Marxism. Has nothing to do with that at all. At all. George Washington's Mount Vernon has come out with a warning because they tore down the statue of George Washington in Portland. Without George Washington, there would be no United States. There would be no Constitution, which allows the freedom of speech, assembly, and protest, as well as the separation of church and state. And without Washington, we would not have a civilian-led military. If we fail to honor George Washington because we only understand him as a slave owner, we're done. Did you hear about the guy in Miami? Vandal used red spray paint to outline the Russian communist symbol of the hammer and the sickle over a plaque on a controversial statue of Juan Ponce de Leon, downtown Miami. Well, Jose Armas, he saw it. He saw the hammer and the sickle, and he saw the red paint all over the statue. He's a U.S. citizen. He went and he showed up in the park. He brought a ladder and cleaning supplies. Last Monday, he was up on the ladder and he was cleaning all of that up. He said he doesn't mind protests, but he minds the color red in the hammer and sickle because he lived through it. He knows what it is. I want to speak to those people who have come from oppression, who have come from Poland, have come from East Germany, have come from behind the Iron Curtain, who know what this is, who have seen it in their own countries, who have lived under Marxist utopias. Your country, your new country, needs you more than ever because we just don't get it. We need you more than ever. We need you to stand up. Those of you from Venezuela, you need to stand up. You need to gather together. And you need to march to wake American people up. You don't need to march to stop Black Lives Matter. You need to march to wake the American people up. Because we don't get it, and we don't think this could ever happen here. I do. I know exactly what's happening here. And I know we have probably until the election to be able to save our nation. We need you to stand up. You probably know what that means. It means if they win, you're on a list. I want veterans to stand up. But I only want veterans who have control of themselves. I want some veteran groups to stand up that will just take the beating. And I know you can do it. I know you can do it. Because you have the kind of honor and integrity that many of our police officers do when they just have people yelling at them. We need those veterans to stand up from all wars and stand up and surround these monuments in our areas. They cannot be taken down. If we lose Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Theodore Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, if we lose these people, we're done. I don't like Robert E. Lee, but we can't lose our history. And that's all they care about. They say these are offensive and they're oppressive. I've never been oppressed by a statue of anyone. I lived in Seattle. Oh, you know what? I think of the statue of Lenin in Seattle. I think it's stupid. Doesn't impress me. It makes me look at all the people around and go, boy, these people are dumb as a box of rocks, huh? It doesn't impress me. You know, there's a story, if you look in the news overseas, you're going to find a story of war veterans protecting a memorial as BLM protesters take over this whole town. Well, it's up in Scotland. It's in Southport Town, at Southport Town Hall. and there was Black Lives Matter coming into town, and the vets were afraid that the memorials and the statues would be defaced and destroyed. So they got up and they just surrounded, wearing, the colors, whatever it is that they could wear, their caps, T-shirts that show what infantry or what regiment they were in. And they stood there peacefully. Now, the London press is saying that these veterans are radical right-wing groups. They're going to call you all kinds of names. They are doing this country a great disservice, and they know it. By marking everyone who is standing up for BLM a just peaceful, wonderful flower child, that we're just going to have a summer of love. And those who stand up and say, wait a minute, this isn't right, as right-wing extremist. Well, if believing in this is standing up for the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights and asking for actual justice over social justice, asking for our police, our military, and our leaders in Washington to follow the Constitution and act accordingly, if that's what makes me a right-wing extremist, well, then so be it. You have gone so far left, you can't even see the right anymore. You can't even see the middle. Did you see what NPR reported this weekend? Vehicle attacks rise as extremists target protesters, from NPR. Apparently, in Virginia, Charlottesville, terrorism researchers say right-wing extremism is turning cars into weapons in response to ongoing protests against police misconduct. Oh my gosh, really? Holy cow, that's horrible. Well, here's what happened. A car in Louisville, Kentucky, went and just was speeding through and hit a protester. And this is honestly right wing for you. Except when you actually look at the whole videotape, not the edited tape that NPR did not make a mistake with. It was purposely edited. You're missing the part where the protesters have surrounded the car of this woman. They are yelling and screaming at her, pounding on the window. Then one of them reaches into the car, grabs her hair, and somebody pulls a gun because they're telling her to get out of the car. Would you get out of the car? Because I wouldn't get out of the car. She stepped on the gas to get away from them, and she didn't see the people that were also protesting that were walking across the street, and all of a sudden, she hit somebody. That's not a right-wing extremist trying to kill these protesters. That's somebody who's panicked because there is no law. We must not take the law in our own hands, but we must stand up for the truth.